what it is. So, yeah. So if you click on this movie, it's not going to be useful for MATLAB. That's my own original impression of short circuit. But then, the thing is that with short circuit, oh, I love this seat. So, the fact is that short circuit has nothing to do with that prank that you saw up there. So with short circuits, what happens is that if you have an if block, it says if true and false. That's not a good example. Let's do it with false. I'm not sure if I can come up with an example that shows how it works. But let's say you have an if block like this, and then I say display something. So if this condition occurs, it's going to print hello world. Alright? And then end. Okay, do you see it? So now, when I use short circuit or instead of a single one, then what happens is that the condition in the if block is going to be evaluated only for the first part. If that happens to be true, then the rest of the condition do not need to be calculated or evaluated. And that saves you some time. You see what it means? So let me try it again. What happened? Okay. Okay. So now let me type this again. So when I say if true or false, what does it mean? What does this statement evaluate to? Yes. So you're comparing, you're saying if the first statement is true or the second statement is true, either one, do something for me, right? Now with short circuit, you can actually save some time. You can say perform the first part and see what the next statement is. If it's a short circuit, or then with or you know what's going to happen with the overall value of the statement if the first one is true. So if this is true, then do you really need the rest of the statement to know the value of this whole if statement here? So if I know there is a true and an or here, or logical operator here, then I don't really need to know the rest of this statement, because there is already true, and true or something else always evaluates to true, right? So I don't need the rest of the statement to be evaluated. And with short circuit, you're basically ignoring the rest of the statement whenever this first one is true. So a better statement would be this. This is not a good one. So I would say, for example, let's define x equals 1, and then I say if x equals 1 or short circuit x equals 2, then do something for me, right? But what does this mean now? If you run this code that has this if block, a code that has this if block statement, the second statement is not going to be evaluated by MATLAB. You don't fill it because MATLAB does this, all these operations under the hood, so you don't see anything. And you won't notice it, but MATLAB basically only calculates the first one. It says if x is equal to 1, and there's a short circuit or here, so if this is true, then you don't need to calculate the rest of the statement. But what if this first one is false? Is short circuit going to help us at all? No, because it doesn't help any, because the first one is false, so the validity of this statement, the truth of this statement depends on the rest of the logical condition, right? So if the first one is false, then short circuit has no difference with regular OR. So you have to calculate the rest of the statement. But if the first one is true, then short circuit has an advantage that gives you more speed up by not evaluating the rest of the statement. So you won't notice much of a difference in your simple calculations, but when you go to like really intensive simulations, like for example in the petroleum industry, you can gain a tremendous amount of speed up by making sure that you don't do calculations that are unnecessary in your code. I have been able, for example, to speed up the some of the petroleum codes when I was working there with like about 30%, which is tremendous. I mean, it may not seem much to you, but in the world of high performance computing, even 10% is a lot. Yes?
Is there any point to using the short circuiting and giving the time?
Yes, of course. Because if you have x equals to 1 and then you have and instead of, so let's say x equals to, we know that x equals 1, right? I have it there. And now if I say if x equals 2 and x equals 1, one of these is correct. Which one is correct? The second one, right? But how about the first one? The first one is false. And you know that, what's the result of false and true? False, right? So, say, if you do well in your homework, and if you do well in your quiz, then you will do well in your overall grade, right? So that's conditioned on both the statements. You have to do well on both of them. If one of them is not correct, then the statement is not valid anymore. So, the same way here. If this is false, I'm sorry, but the second one. So if the first statement is false, and then you have an and short circuit operator there, then you don't need to evaluate the rest of the statement because you know already this whole statement is going to evaluate to false, right? Okay. So last time, I think we were discussing one of these exercises. So I have the solution for that here, for that exercise that we saw last time. So there's a lot of functions, MATLAB built-in functions, that perform logical operations for you. And these are really useful. So let me show you a couple of them. So if you go to the bottom of the page, search for is equal, you're going to find two. One is in the example, and the other one is the table at the end of the page. MATLAB's built-in functions, is functions. So all of them start with is. What does is mean? So whenever you see is, that means the function returns a logical value for you. Okay. So for example, is equal. Then you compare two values with each other if they are equal or not. Is empty. The ones that are really useful, like is filled, is for structures. Do you remember? We tried it last time. So if I say the S, my structure X equals 1. Now I say is filled. What was the order? I don't remember. So I think it was X. No, S and then X. Hopefully this is correct. Yes. And if I say is filled Y, part of S, no. Right? So there are a lot of these sorts of functions, is real or is real, both of them. So that's also a function. Is real, let's say. So you have to be careful with these functions because I showed you last time that if you input a string to Israel, it's going to give you 1, right? So your notion of real number could be different from what MATLAB assumes as real number. What you need to check here, last time we figured, was is numeric, right? It's going to give you 0, all right? Anyway, so let's not waste more time and then go to the second problem. Yeah, so we're here. So now what happens here, that last time I asked you to write a function or a script that compares two matrices, and if they have the same equal size, the same size, then concatenates them, right? In a vertical or horizontal order. So in the question I ask you in a column-wise manner. So you can check the size of the two, the equality of the sizes of the two matrices with is equal, and then to concatenate the two in a column-wise manner, all you need to do is just say C equals the new matrix, the concatenated matrix is equal to A semicolon B. What does this do, you think? Yeah, so you have two matrices, and with this notation, you can just put them right on top of each other, one after the other one, and you create a bigger matrix. You can test this function. Let's try it. Try it with me yourself, because it's not going to be useful for me. I know this stuff already. So let's define A to be equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we have B, which is 7, 8, 9, and 10, 11, 12. And then we can test this script and see if it works or not. If I press enter, okay, what happened? I think I suppressed C, right? So it's not going to print C. So let's see what C is. You see, it concatenated the two matrices. So I had A, which was this. I had B, which was the second one. And then if I say, what is size of A? What is the size of A? 2, 3, yes. And how about size of B? B, 2, 3. So they are equal, right? So if I say is equal size of A, size of B, you're going to get 1, right? Yes. So you have to be careful with is equal, because what it does is that it compares the size of the two arrays that you input, and then it also compares the values of each element with each other. So you see what I have done here? I did not input A and B explicitly themselves, their content. I only input the sizes of the two, right? And you know, size is always is an array, a vector of one row and two columns, right? When you deal with matrices.
So why can you not do a check on the plot for with this one equal sign? If like setting size A is equal to that.
Good question. I think that should also work. But you know what happens? I know what happens. And we discussed it also last time. The problem that happens is that you get a vector for that if statement. So if I say size of A, so is equal gives me one single number, right? Now, what if I say size of A equals size of B instead? What would I get? What do you think I get? Yes, perfect. Oh no. Okay, why? Oh no, you got two ones, yes. So, exactly, because it does a bitwise comparison. So it compares the first element with the first element of the other vector, and then the second element, and it gives you. So if I say, what is size of A, size of A, size of B. So both of them are a vector of one row and two columns, right? So when I compare these two and say, is this vector equal to this vector, I'm going to get another vector that has the same number of columns and the same number of elements, rows. And for each one, you do a bitwise or element-wise comparison, right? So that's a difference, and that was a good question.
Well,
yes.
Then I was actually asking, what if, like, if you write an block with just one equal sign, you're not doing a comparison, you're asking.
Oh no, then you get an. What do you think you get if I do this?
Well,
Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that is it.
So what you're saying here is that whenever you use a single equality sign, what does it mean? You're performing an assignment, right? And that doesn't make sense. That would give you a syntax error. Why? Because size is a MATLAB function. So size of b is going to output for you a vector or a scalar number. Size of a is going to output a scalar. Now you're saying set the output of a, size a, equal to the output of size b. And that's not going to work because both of them are output of something else.
You can write this statement with if x equals 3. Or like if you can set a variable equal to some constant within this block.
Yes, yes. So the problem is that the size of a is not a variable.
Oh, okay.
It's a function, right? So you cannot assign anything to a function. Okay. You could say a equals b. That's something totally different, right? And now you're going to get 0. Why do I get 0 for all? Why do I get 6 elements, by the way? When I say a double equals b, is because both of them are 2 by 3, right? So it performs an element-wise comparison, and none of them are equal to each other because what is a? A is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, and then the b is something else. So no elements are matching. So you get all zeros. Now, what if I said a equals c?
You get like 1.
So what is c? You remember? C is a concatenation of a and b. So c is equal to a semicolon b. Right? Now, what if I say a equals c? Let's see. Try it yourself. It's easy. That means you didn't perform the previous task that I asked you. Yeah, matrix mismatch. What does this happen? Because A is 2 by 3 and C is 4 by 3, right? So the matrices do not match. And I told you that when you use equality, double equality operation, what happens is that you are performing an element-wise comparison, right? So let's try the second one. Write a script that checks if the script itself exists. Use the keyword exists and guide your mind to find something in MATLAB that helps you to check if the script exists or not. You can use the functions in this page, or if you want, you can go to MATLAB manual. So what you need to do is to create a file, a script, MATLAB script. So you go to your MATLAB editor, press Ctrl N, it's going to open a new script for you. And then you type something, you write an if block here, but you need to save your file somewhere. So you say, save your file in your working directory, wherever it is, or in your desktop, and give it a name. Just name it my script, or whatever you like. And then in the script, write an if block that checks if this script with this name, the name of the script itself, exists in the working directory or not. And if it exists, it prints something, some message. Like, the file exists, what do you expect? It should exist. Yes.
Why exactly is it that the output of the exist function is 2 and not 1?
2 and 1?
Yeah, when I type in the function, it gives me output is 2.
So, exist doesn't take one, only one input. It has 2 inputs. So, like for example, I can say exist C var. Made a mistake. You see what happened? I checked if the entity, if the object C exists, and I gave it its type, if it's var or not, right? So it's a variable. if you drop this, I think what happens is that MATLAB has a list of priorities or precedents to check one by one. So I think first it goes to the workspace, in your workspace. If C exists, then it prints 1 for you, just like what I show you here, right? If C doesn't exist, then it goes to other places. It searches for a file in your working directory, not workspace, now in working directory. So let me see where we are right now. We are in bin. It's not a good place to be. So let's go to desktop. I have untitled 2. So let's open this one. Okay. Now I can say exist untitled 2 file. Oh, it's because we are not in the working directory. The working directory is not the folder that contains untitled 2. So if I press change the folder, now I'm in the folder that contains untitled 2. Now if I say exist untitled 2 file, it's going to give me an answer that's not 0, right? It means that the file exists. Why is it 2 instead of 1? Exactly. If you go to the end of the page, you go to this manual and find exist. C also exists. There is a number that corresponds to each type. So if it's a variable, you're going to get 1 if you use exist. If you get 2, that means it's a file name. You get 3, so different things. So you can even check for a folder. You can say if a folder exists in your directory or not, and if its number is 7, then that means there's a folder in your directory. All right? So everybody wake up and write that script. Everybody who has a laptop should be awake. Some of you don't have laptop, and they informed us before that. Yes.
Right now we're using
Yes. Yes. Why does this happen? Because the size has a certain size.
what I know
What happens? So first of all, make it otherwise. What's the dimension of the output of the instruction?
Here, pull up.
So it has 1 row, 1 column, right? Because matrix has 2 dimensions, right? The other row has a column. And then size of A vectorized 1 row is column, right? Now, so the size of mass, size of A, equals to the size of B dimensions. The dimensions are not equal to other. But then the elements do not match, right? Right, exactly. So the number of columns, A and C are the same because both of them have 3 columns. But the number of rows is not the same. Number of rows in A is longer than right. And the number of rows in C is 4. Okay, so when you compare them, you get 0 for the first one, and then 1 for the second one. That's the answer. Otherwise, it doesn't make Yes. Because, okay, good question. which has a trivial answer. Why do we have to use quotation marks for input variables to exist?
Otherwise, they look for variables.
What was that?
They look for variables.
Yes, but then, well, if you input a file name, it will also request a quotation mark for you, right? So it will say, always input the variables with quotation marks. It has a really trivial answer. So don't think complicated.
The file into script.
No, you're thinking too complicated.
No, I meant the file into script.
What was that?
String.
Exactly. No, even there's a simpler answer to that, because MATLAB wants it that way. That's simple. You could write a function. MATLAB could have written this function in a way that doesn't request for the quotation marks, but they just felt it's much easier, and indeed it's easier to convert everything on input to a string and then search for the entities that you would like to find. Right? So it's just a convention. Any success so far? Yes.
Why didn't that fit the file?
Because now you're telling it to not waste time and search the workspace first, and then you see this is the order that it searches for the object, if it exists or not. So it will start with 0 and then go on like this. Well, 0 is preserved for non-existence, but for the other ones. So you can just directly tell it, go and find this file for me. And there's another case that this is useful. When is it? Suppose you have a variable that has the same name as your file. Let's say I define a variable that has the name. Let's say this. I want to know if C is a file name, but I use exist C. It's going to give me 1, but this is wrong. There is no C file in my working directory, but there's a C variable in the workspace. So it's going to give me 1, right? So that's a mistake. So you have to always specify. It's always good to specify the type of object that you're looking for. Is it a variable or file or something else? Yes.
So if I like on my command window, if I just do like exist, that works. But why can't I do it in my
No. So yeah. So that's a good point. If you try exist on your command line, you don't need the parentheses. Again, that's how MATLAB works. There is really no logic behind it. So you could say exist C. It's going to give you 1, right?
I had parentheses and fixed it, and it's still there.
So parentheses and the quotation marks.
Yeah.
And it gives you error stuff.
Yeah. If I don't have the file, like this isn't going to be it's good. So I was looking at like why.
That is strange. So, but now try to run it and see if it works.
Like right now?
Yes.
It works right now.
Okay, awesome.
But this was
So, yeah, that's.
oh,
Did it work? It should. There's something wrong with your exist. So, I think probably the space or something else.
okay.
Yes. Yes. No, it has to be. It's a good question again. So normally when I try to find the file, I make sure that it's in the working directory that I'm working. Otherwise, it will search, I think, all the paths that exist in the path list of MATLAB. So let's see. In 2, file name session. It doesn't, yes, okay, so you see it says search path, right? So MATLAB has a search path that includes a long list of directories that it will search one by one, right? So it may be possible to also tell it exactly which path you want to search, but I'm not sure. 5. Yeah, it looks like it doesn't exist. So one solution, if you want to search for a file, specifically in a folder, is to check your change your working directory to that folder. Just do a CD and then check for that. Or the other solution would be to give the directory as part of the file name. That might also work. I'm not sure. You can test it and see. Okay. How many are successful in writing the file? Okay, like 1/3 of the class. Oh, if you're done with the second one, yes, exactly. Or, well, it's a very dumb script, right? If the script already runs, that means it exists. But it's really cool to know that you can check your own existence, right? It gives you some confidence. Reminds me of that sentence, I think it's about poet. It says, "I think, therefore I exist." So it's something like that. My laptop is going to die soon, so we better finish this stuff here as soon as possible. So if you're done with the second problem, go to the third. And the third is not that much difficult. And let's finish it as soon as possible. Okay, so with the second one, you need to convert this function into an if block. So you can use input at the beginning of the MATLAB script and say input, enter a value for x. Okay. Now you can enter the value, and once you enter the value, then you write an if block that checks if this value x is in between these two numbers or not. If it's in between the two, then the value of y is x. Otherwise, the value of y is x squared. Right? And then at the end, after your if block, you output the value of y. You just type y or display y. That's it. Yes.
Can I ask a question regarding this?
Sure.
So I was a bit satisfied with the one is I'm not with something as simple as this.
Yes.
Which is like
That's
this.
it. Yes. That's as simple as that. I don't see anything wrong. Don't script. By the way, for the second problem, don't script on the command line. Always create a MATLAB script file and then write everything there. It's going to create a mess if you use command line for these sort of complex calculations. Not and. Ampersand, yes. 2. Okay. Yes.
What is the runner advanced?
What was that?
Runner advanced?
Runner at that?
Yes, it's one of the hard ones. This is the first one.
Oh, that's for debugging. So yeah, don't care about that. The thing is called run. Any success yet?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So if you input 1, what would you expect your code to give you? 1. Yes, great. I have the answer for the second one, if you want to look at it. Okay, so yes,
I have a question for homework before.
yes, yes.
On the directory listing thing, do you want us to assume that they input Linux-based directory path or?
That's fine. Whichever you input to MATLAB, it's gonna work. Both of them, yes. So there's a difference between Linux and Windows, or Mac and Windows, and that's about the way folders or names of folders and files are separated in a path string. So in Windows, you use the the backward slash, right? So you say C/ and then you go to users, and then Amir, something like this, and so on. If you're Linux, then everything is in reverse, or Mac. So all the backward slashes are forward slash. But this has become so much a headache that MATLAB team have come up with a solution. They automatically fix this for you. Whichever you enter, it's going to be fixed in the correct.
So then, anything that you created in your web browser, like when you browse the internet, it
Yes.
uses forward slashes. Is it based on the
It's no, not necessarily. I'm not sure why internet is all backward slash, but there's been a conflict between these Bill Gates and the guy who was Linus Torvalds, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So these were enemies probably from the beginning. So they tried to come up with opposite solutions for everything, and now they have put billions of people in trouble. So. How many are done with that third one? Okay, awesome. So the solution for the third one is also there, if you wanted to have a look. Okay. So now let me tell you one last thing about if conditionals. Almost always I use if blocks in my code, everywhere. But there is also another conditional block that you can use, and it's also in C, Fortran, any other language also has this, but I haven't seen it being used often. So my laptop is dying. I have only 7%. That means it's gonna die. So I'm gonna disconnect.